Section 31 was a surprise hit after all, and I hope it's good news for Star Trek streaming movies. Star Trek Section 31 was a streaming hit in its first week on Paramount Plus, which may come as a surprise to its detractors. Encouragingly, this success could mean hope for more Star Trek streaming movies. Directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi and written by Craig Sweeney, Star Trek Section 31 premiered on Paramount Plus on January 24, 2025. The first Star Trek movie in the 9 years since Star Trek Beyond, Section 31 is headlined by Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh as Emperor Philippa Georgiou. Reviews for Star Trek Section 31 were resoundingly negative, and online reactions from Star Trek fans were even more savage. On Rotten Tomatoes, Star Trek Section 31 ranks at 19% rotten, with a 16% audience score. While Star Trek Section 31 has its supporters as well, the consensus is that Michelle Yeoh's action-packed spectacle falls short of the tenets Trekkies feel a proper Star Trek movie should consist of. However, Star Trek Section 31's Week 1 streaming numbers indicate the film did better than its haters might have expected. Star Trek Section 31 was a streaming success for Paramount Plus in Week 1. A report in The Hollywood Reporter about the huge streaming success of The Night Agent Season 2 on Netflix contains a surprising and encouraging factoid about Star Trek Section 31. For the week of January 20th-26, which was the first weekend of Star Trek Section 31, Michelle Yeoh's Actioner ranks 8 among streaming movies with 170 million minutes streamed. Director Olatunde Osunsanmi shared the good news on his Threads account. Star Trek Section 31 was the number 2 movie on Paramount Plus for its first week, behind Gladiator 2. Since then, Section 31 has dropped out of Paramount Plus' top 10. However, it's an impressive first-week performance that's better than Star Trek Section 31's poor reviews indicated. Opening week interest in Section 31 can be attributed to the star power of Michelle and a strong marketing push by Paramount Plus. So, while Section May 31st not be a runaway success, its first week numbers, at least, were not disastrous. Star Trek streaming movies could continue after Section 31. Star Trek Section 31's sorry reviews and fan reactions led to a worry that it would mark the end of Star Trek streaming movies on Paramount Plus at their inception. Paramount Plus' hoped-for announced plan was for a new Star Trek streaming movie every 2 years to complement the existing Star Trek TV series on the streamer. Section 31's opening week numbers create hope that more Star Trek streaming movies can indeed happen. After all, if Star Trek Section 31 managed to overcome deleterious word of mouth and a critical shellacking to score in its first week, it's logical to think a Star Trek movie embraced by fans and reviewers could be a runaway hit. Star Trek Section 31's 170 million minutes streamed in Week 1 is a positive metric Paramount Plus should consider, although the movie's numbers in subsequent weeks may tell a different story. But again, it's a hopeful sign for the reception a different and better Star Trek streaming movie could garner. Hopefully, Paramount Plus will take Star Trek Section 31's opening week numbers as a signal that Star Trek streaming movies are still viable and should be pursued. A Star Trek Section 31 sequel isn't what audiences are looking for, though this is surely disappointing news for Michelle Yeoh and her future in Star Trek, since her Emperor Georgiou character is now moored in Section 31's early 24th century timeframe. But there is certainly an opportunity and desire for streaming movies about other Star Trek characters and ideas. Think of what a Star Trek movie fans get behind might accomplish. For years, Star Trek Section 31 felt more like a myth than an actual project. Announced, delayed, retooled, re-announced, and then seemingly forgotten in the warp core of development limbo, the Michelle Yeoh-led spy thriller seemed destined to be one of those what-could-have-beens. But against all odds, Section 31 finally materialized, and to everyone's surprise, it hit. And I don't just mean it landed quietly on Paramount Plus with some modest praise. I mean it hit, a critical darling, a streaming success story, and something even rarer in the Trek universe, a sleek, focused, action-packed standalone that didn't need 10 hours to make its point. Maybe it was the condensed runtime, maybe it was the Oscar-winning star power of Yeoh, or maybe it was Trek fans finally being given something new that didn't forget what made the franchise special in the first place. Either way, Section 31 was a surprise, and a welcome one. A new kind of Trek. The Star Trek franchise has always been about boldly going, but the past few years have been, let's say, a bit more turbulent than boldly triumphant. Discovery split the fanbase. Picard was a roller coaster of nostalgia and creative chaos. Strange New Worlds got closer to the classic magic, and Lower Decks proved there was still room for comedy, satire, and heart. But the idea of Trek branching into feature-length, streaming-exclusive films? That was uncharted space. Until Section 31, there was skepticism. Could a Trek movie work without the theatrical muscle of Abrams' Kelvin timeline? Could Michelle Yeoh's morally gray Philippa Georgiou carry an entire story that leaned into espionage instead of exploration? Turns out, yes. The movie took risks, but it knew its audience. It embraced the covert darkness of the Section 31 narrative while still weaving in the philosophical backbone of Starfleet. It wasn't a massive ship battle or a multiverse spectacle. It was intimate, intense, and often surprisingly emotional. In short, it was something new for Trek without being unrecognizable. Why it worked? Let's be honest, Michelle Yeoh is a phenomenon. Her portrayal of the Mirror Universe's Empress Georgiou has always been one of Discovery's best decisions. In Section 31, she wasn't just the scene stealer, she was the scene. The movie leaned into her complexity, a woman torn between her ruthless instincts and her slow-growing appreciation for the ideals of the universe she now calls home. The story worked because it gave her room to be powerful and vulnerable. It wasn't afraid to ask hard questions. What does loyalty mean in a world built on secrets? Can someone truly change? And where do you draw the line between protecting the future and controlling it? Add in some sharp writing, a few morally ambiguous allies and enemies, and a tone that sat comfortably between spy thriller and cerebral Trek allegory, and you've got something that both old fans and new viewers could appreciate. The future of Trek movies? If Section 31 teaches us anything, it's that the future of Star Trek doesn't have to be a binary choice between sprawling streaming seasons and blockbuster cinematic releases. There's room for something in between, mid-budget, character-driven streaming films that explore corners of the universe that the main series can't always afford to visit. And frankly, this is the path Trek should follow. Imagine a Starfleet JAG film with Commander Tuvok investigating a rogue admiral, or a medical drama about Dr. Crusher on a remote outpost, or even a quiet, dialogue-heavy film about Ambassador Spock negotiating peace. All of these could work beautifully as 90-minute to 2-hour streaming features. Done right, they'd not only flesh out the galaxy, but give actors and characters new life outside the constraints of an ensemble cast. Paramount Plus may have stumbled onto a goldmine. If the data backs it up, and let's be real, it probably does, the success of Section 31 could mean more experimental Trek films are on the way. Final frontier thoughts. Section 31 could have been a disaster. It could have been a bloated, grim mess of sci-fi noir cliches. But it wasn't. It was sharp, stylish, and most importantly, Trek at heart. There's a lesson here. Not every journey needs to be a 5-season arc. Sometimes the best stories come in smaller, more focused bursts. If Paramount is smart, they'll take the win, study what worked, and get to work greenlighting the next one. The final frontier is wide open. And now we know streaming movies have a place in it. Let me know if you'd like a version tailored for a specific publication, blog format, or with more fan references.